We give, we receive, we act, we construct. All day long we apply our minds to struggles against one thing or another. Struggles unadorned or struggles concealed, but in either case, tightly packed one after another, without gap. The small fears leave us nervous and depleted. The large fears leave us stunned and blank, shooting forth like an arrow from a bowstring. Such is our presumption when we arbitrate right and wrong. Holding as if to sworn oaths, such is our defense of our victories. Worn away as if by autumn and winter, such is our daily dwindling. Drowning us in our own activities, unable to turn back, held fast as if bound by cords, we continue along the same ruts. The mind is left on the verge of death, and nothing can restore its vitality. Joy and anger, sorrow and happiness, plans and regrets, transformations and stagnations, unguarded abandonment and deliberate posturing, day and night, they alternate before us, but no one knows whence they sprout. That is enough. That is enough. Is it from all of this, presented ceaselessly day and night, that we come to exist? And yet, all of your anxiety will not save you. Forget what should and should not be. I have no need for an empire. And those words are taken from an ancient Chinese text called the Zhangzi, named after the man who wrote it, Zhangzi. And I've butchered that pronunciation, I'm sorry. It was written in a period of Chinese history known as the Warring States period, which began in the 5th century BC and was centuries of the individual regions of China fighting each other for control of the emerging country as we roughly know it today. And this period of history served as a huge catalyst for accelerating cultural development in China. As the states were competing against each other, they were pushing new schools of thought, which led to vast innovation in philosophy, economics, politics, warfare, and all other forms of cultural development. And this period is specifically important for philosophy, and obviously Eastern philosophy. Across China, many different schools of thought developed. Confucius and Confucianism, genuinely known through a series of writings. The Analects is probably best well known out of the many of this period. Sun Tzu is also another well-known figure. The classic book, The Art of War, is attributed to him, although it's not actually known if he wrote the whole book. And out of the many schools of thought in this period, a small, quiet, peaceful philosophy emerged in the Wudang province. And it's this philosophy that I'm going to explore with this episode, because I believe it can help you, dear listener, no matter where you are and who you are, to live a better life. Western life today in 2021 is easy. It's incredibly easy. It's almost too easy. We have machines and computers that do almost everything for us. Travel is easy, cooking is easy, shopping is easy. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have a nice, cozy, and comfortable bed to sleep in at night. We have heated houses, digital technology, home entertainment, mobile phones, extraordinary technological capacities. We have global peace between the industrialized countries. We have birth control, the internet, universal healthcare, universal education, universal suffrage, personal freedom, and political freedom. It's a very, very good time and place to be alive right now. And yet, mental health issues are increasing. Self-reported issues of anxiety, stress, and depression are increasing. So why is this the case? Why is it the case that in the best time in human history to be alive, more people are getting treated for issues with anxiety? It's because modern life, although in historical terms is easy, it is actually riddled with new challenges that we as a species have never had to think of before. And this has a little to do with meaning, like I talked about in the last episode. And I'm going to expand upon that, and I'm going to go into a more social, economic, and cultural causes of this in the next episode. This episode is going to specifically address the individual. Personal happiness in modern life. Because that concept, I believe, has in a mainstream sense been wildly twisted, distorted, and grossly misrepresented. The images of happiness we see in popular culture nowadays always include one or both of these two things I'm about to go through. Not only that, I'm going to go into my own thoughts and how Zhongzi can help you, dear listener, live a happier life. The first of these two things, these barriers to happiness, is the notion that you need to have something to be happy. And think of something in that sentence as an algebraic X. You need to have X to be happy. This general notion that you need something to be happy, right? i.e., you need to have a nice big house to be happy. You need to have a takeaway tonight to be happy. You need better clothes. You need a nice car, a new motorbike or surfboard or wetsuit or a new camera, a better camera. You need a new phone, a better phone. You need to have a hot girlfriend or boyfriend. You need a perfect body. You need a more attractive face and facial features. You need more money. You need to have a big holiday. You need a big group of interesting, good-looking friends. You need to have lots of likes on your Instagram pictures, and you need lots of followers. You need to watch the next film coming out. You need to have a certain drink. You need a better social life. You need a better love life. You need. You need a famed career, a flawless reputation, and to make a real impact on all of the problems in the world. You need to have something to be happy. And the possession of these things will make you happy. And I mean, the subconscious transmission of these types of signals are literally all around us in the 21st century economy. Right, at tram stops, at bus stops, on buses themselves. Literally 20-foot high adverts driving past you in the street. Social media. And social media adverts sneakily put to you. Adverts in television breaks, before the film starts, there's adverts in trailers, etc. Everywhere. There is marketing and advertising everywhere, selling you this idea that you need to buy something and it's going to make you happy. So that's the first point. This idea that you need to have something to be happy. And if you don't have it, you are therefore unhappy. Right? If you don't get an invite to a party on the weekend, this is somehow a signal of your unworthiness. If you don't have a booming social life or an exciting love life, you are therefore unhappy. Which is obviously problematic. And I'll come back to that. The second barrier to happiness is comparison. I.e., you feel unhappy because someone is better than you, better looking, more popular, more likes on social media, smarter, richer, gets more girls, has bigger muscles, gets more boys, has a better body, has a better relationship, is more beautiful, has a better career, creates a bigger impact, has a nicer car, better clothes, gets more attention, whatever. The notion that you're not good enough because someone is better in some way. These two things are barriers to happiness. And here's why. They make happiness conditional. Right? As for the first, this general notion that you have to collect all of these things and then you'll be happy. You just have to tick certain boxes and then you qualify for happiness. You just have to tick certain boxes and then you qualify for happiness. And when you're in this frame, happiness is conditional, which is a problem. Because really picture this now. It means that you're chasing happiness. It starts from this assumption that you don't have and you are not enough. That what you have and who you are right now isn't enough, and that you must chase and acquire these things to become happy. And there's this famous saying, and a very, very famous song, which is a really good song actually, which perfectly captures this. The saying is, on the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness. You're chasing it. It's something you don't have right now, and you're chasing it. And when you finally get it, then you'll be happy. And this trap, unfortunately, is all too easy to fall into. It's so very easy to feel like we need more to be happy. It's so very easy to feel like we're not good enough when we compare ourselves to others. It's easy to feel like we don't have anything when we see adverts for things we can't afford. It's just so easy to feel unhappy in the modern world, particularly with social media's influence. And social media, as is well known in our culture, draws heavily our attention to the aspect of comparison. But what I've come to see, and what I've learned from Zhangzi, and pretty much all of the Eastern philosophy that I've read and practiced, is the following. Our unhappiness, and even further than that, our emotional suffering, comes from all of this desire. More often than not, desire of things we don't have. This incessant, unsatiable, continuous, driven desire for more, and not only more, but also better. This is the source of your suffering. This desire, this attachment, this need for something that you decide qualifies you for happiness. Your desire for these things is the source of your suffering. So there's two things you need to realize. Firstly, And we're getting into the solutions of the problems now. Firstly, enough is never enough. Therefore, enough is always enough. I'm going to say it again. Enough is never enough. Therefore, enough is always enough. And that, no doubt, may have raised an eyebrow. Because it sounds like a meaningless, paradoxical statement. But it isn't. Allow me to explain. What it means is that if you play this game of pursuing happiness, chasing it, if you play this game of qualifying your happiness based on things that you don't have, it never ends. The pursuit never ends. Because there will always be something else to acquire. There will always be something else to get. And there will always be someone who is better than you in comparison at something. Always. If you judge your worthiness by comparison, you will never finish that race. And like I just said, there will always be more things to acquire, more races to win, more followers to get, more clothes to buy, a bigger house, a nicer car, a newer phone, a better body, always. It doesn't end. It never gets to the point where you can say, right, I'm here, I have arrived. Now I'm qualified for happiness. It never ends. It's the perfect donkey and the carrot analogy. Enough is never enough. Therefore, the solution to this, and the key to a happy life that you can start doing right now, dear listener, right now, is a principle called gratitude, which is the simple principle of cherishing, enjoying, loving, and appreciating what you do have, rather than incessantly chasing and pursuing that which you don't, and using that metric to qualify yourself for happiness, continuously fretting that you don't have enough to qualify for happiness. Let go. Let go of this unsatiable desire. Let go of it. And take a deep breath and open your eyes to what you do have. Appreciate what you do have. A house to live in. Clean water. A bed to sleep in. Nice food. Family and friends. Once you stop chasing happiness, once you let go of this driven desire for more, this need, once you let go of that ambitious need for more, you are free to enjoy what you do have. So much of our suffering in life is self-perpetuated. It's a trap. Real, lasting happiness doesn't come from buying new clothes. Although buying new clothes is fun. There's nothing wrong with buying new clothes, by the way. But it isn't real, lasting happiness. It doesn't come from working decades of your life just so you can buy a big house. Although there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't come from trying to convince other people that you're more popular than you are on social media. Real, lasting happiness comes from letting go of this extrinsic desire and incessant chasing. It comes from a loving what you do have. The friends you do have, cherish them. Message them right now. The house you live in, appreciate it. Appreciate the house you live in. The food that you do eat, enjoy it. Start realizing that what you do have is wonderful. Stop comparing yourself to others and stop telling yourself you need more and better to be happy. Appreciate who you are and what you have right now. Stop chasing happiness as if you will ever finish that race. This is called gratitude. And it's this concept which is perfectly wrapped up in my favorite Zhangzi quote, which I included at the end of the opening monologue. I have no need for an empire. So this is one of two things that I wanted to express with this episode. First, this concept of gratitude, and that real happiness is gratitude. Appreciating what you have and not casting judgment upon it. The second is with regards to coping with anxiety. And I'm no stranger to this feeling. Anxiety. We all feel it somehow, be it in a greater or lesser degree. It's something, as I'm sure you have too, I've deeply felt in life before. Like I laid out in episode 5 when I started teaching kids to swim. And also when I was in my early and mid-teens competing in sailing. Right? I'm familiar with the feeling of anxiety, not intensely, not in a way that impaired my ability to live, but I've definitely felt its icy claws. And we associate the word anxiety with a really intense image, perhaps even with ill mental health. So for the purpose of this episode, when I speak about anxiety, I'm not talking specifically about these intense cases and issues. Although they are included as a whole, everything I say is applicable to these cases. I'm not just speaking about those, I'm also speaking of the little instances of worrying too, the daily instances of little cases. Everything that I'm talking about is going to be able to address everything on the spectrum. And to start off this segment, think of a time in your life, dear listener, when you were anxious, big or small. I'm serious. Think of a time in your life when you were anxious. I'll put money on it. You were worrying about something that hadn't happened yet. Am I right? Maybe it was going into work the next day. Maybe it was messaging or approaching someone you're interested in. Maybe it was waiting for exam results. Maybe it was getting ready for a difficult conversation you know you needed to have. Whatever it was, I'm guessing that at the time, it was in the future. And please, actually hold this image in your head. Right? Really think of a time in your life where you felt anxious or worried or apprehensive for something, because I'm going to come back to this. So keep it in your head, right? What you must understand is that anxiety is simply a fear of the future. Anxiety is simply a fear of the future. That dreadful feeling you get in a big way or a small way. That's what it is. It's fear. It's apprehension. It's nervousness. It's concern. And it points to one fundamental principle. When you're feeling anxiety, you are distrusting the future. You don't trust the future. And this is why you're scared about it. You have a feeling bad things are going to happen. And before I go any further, let me state, there are definitely some things in life which warrant anxiety. In a healthy way. Say you have a really important interview coming up. You'll no doubt feel a little bit of stress to prepare really well for it, which is fine. That's helpful. In psychology, that's known as eustress. This healthy anxiety which fuels action and preparation for the future. That's cool. The distinction I want to make very clear here, what I'm talking about is actually an irrational attachment to things which may or may not happen in the future, because that isn't healthy. And I'll bet that instance in your life that you were thinking about was one of those, and not the former. And besides being unhealthy, it's also not helpful. To bring in another quote from the opening monologue, which sounds incredibly depressing at first, and yet all of your anxiety will not save you. All of your anxiety will not save you. This may sound incredibly sinister to you. It may sound very depressing, helpless, and pessimistic, but Zhang Zi is actually implying the exact opposite. He's saying your anxiety is needless. In these cases where we have this irrational fear of the future, he says it makes absolutely no difference whether you feel anxiety for something or not. It has absolutely no influence on the outcome. It doesn't change anything. Things will happen or not happen, regardless of how you feel. So understand that. But to get to the source of your anxious suffering, to understand how to let go of this anxiety, we need to understand that the source of your anxious suffering is that you are attached to a certain outcome in the future. I'm going to repeat that. The source of your anxious suffering is that you are attached to a certain outcome in the future. Much like pursuing happiness, you think you need things to happen in the future. You think certain boxes need to be ticked, otherwise you'll be unhappy. In much the same way, you are projecting these expectations into the future, in which you think your happiness depends. Again, it comes back to this point. You have all of this desire, these needs, expectations. But even worse this time, you're projecting it into the future. A place you will never be. It's a wacky concept for us to think of, but this is what Zhang Zi proposed. You must let go of this attachment to the future. You must stop thinking that you need certain things to happen or not happen. You must let go of the future. And this is what he means by forget what should or should not be. Forget what should or should not be. Stop projecting your expectations and needs into the future, because this is the source of your anxiety. Stop planning and scheming and controlling and needing and desiring. Stop attaching yourself to the future. Let go. And the principle I'm about to talk about is really in the deep end of Eastern philosophy. I'm not going to get into it too deeply here, but the reason you should, quote unquote, let go is because you should trust the future. And this is the great clash of Western and Eastern philosophy. Western thought is that you and life are imperfect and need to be struggled against. Whereas Eastern thought, generally, suggests that life is pretty good when you learn to flow with it. When you let go of expectations and your own personal selfish desire and accept life as it is. But I don't want to get too deep into that. I want to keep this practical. So, to close, remember what I've discussed in this episode. Your happiness doesn't depend on acquiring more and better. It depends on how much you appreciate what you already have. Happiness isn't consumption. Happiness isn't comparison. Happiness is gratitude. The pursuit of happiness is a fleeting mirage, one you will never realize. What you have in your life right now is all you need to be happy. You just need to realize it. And lastly, stop projecting your fears into the future. Let go of your attachments to expectations, and along with them, your anxiety. I'm going to reread the intro monologue again, and think about the things think about the things I've talked about in this episode. We give, we receive, we act, we construct. All day long, we apply our minds to struggles against one thing or another. Struggles unadorned or struggles concealed, but in either case, tightly packed, and one after another, without gap. The small fears leave us nervous and depleted. The large fears leave us stunned and blank. Shooting forth like an arrow from a bowstring. Such is our presumption when we arbitrate right and wrong. Holding fast as if to sworn oaths, such is our defense of our victories. Worn away as if by autumn and winter. Such is our daily dwindling. Drowning us in our own activities, unable to turn back, held fast as if bound by cords, we continue along the same ruts. The mind is left on the verge of death, and nothing can restore its vitality. Joy and anger, sorrow and happiness, plans and regrets, transformations and stagnations, unguarded abandonment and deliberate posturing. Day and night they alternate before us, but no one knows whence they sprout. That is enough. That is enough. Is it from all of this, presented ceaselessly, day and night, that we come to exist? And yet all of your anxiety will not save you. Forget what should and should not be. I have no need for an empire.